SpaceX launched its Falcon 9 rocket yesterday. It might have felt routine. The private space agency has more than 150 missions planned this year, but before mankind could reach for the stars, we had to conquer the skies. Bradley Blackburn takes us to the place where that history was made. Bradley, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Michelle, good morning. Travelers who've come to New York probably know the names of the city's airports, LaGuardia and JFK, but you may not have heard of the city's first commercial airport, Floyd Bennett Field. Almost a century ago, it helped create air travel as we know it today, and it's still a place where you can take off on a journey into history. Up this way?
Yeah, right up there. You're almost there.
At the top of a building in Brooklyn, New York, a 4-story climb up takes you right to the heart of aviation's golden age.
This is the balcony where they would have positioned people with binoculars looking out for aircraft coming into the airport.
The tower looks out to where decades ago crowds flocked to witness pioneering flights by pilots we still know today. Names like Howard Hughes,
no men were ever born who have flown so far, so fast.
Amelia Earhart,
she said she could, and she did it.
And Wiley Post, who made the first solo flight round the world, starting and ending here.
Wiley Post nudges the heavily laden Winnie Mae skyward.
Anybody who was anybody in aviation in the 1930s flew out of here, men and women.
Ranger Lincoln Hollowell has overseen Floyd Bennett Field for more than 25 years, now part of the National Park Service. The former airport sits on over 1,000 acres of protected land.
This is Floyd Bennett. Ladies and gentlemen.
Named after a notable aviator, it opened in 1931, when it was one of the busiest airports in the world. The first commercial airfield in New York City. At the time, it was cutting edge.
It had something that most other airports in the world did not have, and that's long paved concrete runways.
It shows how just 28 years after the Wright brothers flew, aviation was advancing at a speed that must have shocked passengers.
They probably grew up at a time where the most common form of transportation, especially in urban areas, was a horse.
And there was one that looked.
It still astonishes that mankind went from this to this to this in less than 100 years. And so much about this, the experience of modern flying, was created right here. American Airlines and TWA flew from a terminal tiny by today's standards.
What's upstairs?
Well, what was upstairs were dorm rooms.
Inside, it looks more like a train station than an airport.
Was there a template for an airline terminal in those days?
Not really. They were sort of making it up as they went along.
There were familiar things like this baggage counter, but some ideas didn't stick. Like giant turntables in the tarmac that would spin planes around to taxi for takeoff. And long before the invention of jetways, there was this.
This is our passenger loading tunnel. This would have taken passengers underneath the tarmac to the airplane, and they'd enter from the back.
Safely out of the way of spinning propellers. But its location is part of why this field failed as a commercial airport. It was too far by car from Manhattan and never got a critical contract to handle airmail for the Postal Service.
So letters were more profitable for these airlines than people were.
Yes, exactly. And it wasn't really until the DC-3 that the profit could be made carrying passengers instead of carrying mail.
The city opened LaGuardia much closer in 1939. 3 years later, during World War II, the U.S. Navy bought Floyd Bennett Field, transforming it into a vital site on the home front.
What was this place like when you first came here?
It was an active naval air station.
Bob Weiss is now 88 years old. As a 24-year-old, he served here during the Cold War, part of a flight crew flying missions aboard a plane like this, the Lockheed P-2V Neptune.
It is a big plane.
Absolutely. Carried 8 to 10 guys.
They made 12-hour round-trip journeys.
Now, this is a historic view.
To spot Soviet subs out in the Atlantic.
Bob, this is a real window into history here. What was the role of the person that was sitting right here?
It was an observer station.
The aircraft now sits inside this 2-acre hangar built at Floyd Bennett Field during World War II. Many of these planes would have flown here, including an A-4 Skyhawk and a C-47 Skytrain.
But they would fit 27 troops in here.
Jim Crookshanks is part of the historic aircraft restoration project known as HARP. The volunteers, called the Angels of HARP, earn their wings painting, patching, and bringing new life to these old planes.
What impact does it have on you to stand up close to one of these planes?
It's unreal because I've been to a lot of air museums. They're always roped off and you can't get close, and they're all shiny, but these have like the smell, the feel, the touch, the oil's leaking out of them. These are real planes.
The restoration project launched 30 years ago with Weiss and other military veterans who had experience with the planes and could even make parts no longer in production.
Those people are long gone.
Now we're trying to teach ourselves how to do these things, trial and error. I'm trying to learn how to weld, it started off not good at all, but it's getting better.
You're learning.
Getting better. I'm learning, but we need more volunteers.
The mission now is to preserve the past for new visitors and tell the story of Floyd Bennett Field and the remarkable people who carried flight forward right here.
It's an honor to have somebody that I can sit next to who served the country like he did in a place where I can walk and see. It just makes it a little more special.
Is there something about the space?
Still smells the same inside the plane. I'll tell you, when I go in the P2V, it smells like it was yesterday.
Why does the smell make you choke up?
I just have a feeling for the place. You know, it just makes me feel good coming down here. Same with these guys. I can't do it anymore. And I can't even crawl inside the planes. But some of these guys, you know, the work that they do and how they feel about it, it's a wonderful feeling.
Those volunteers so committed to that mission, guys. Now, because Floyd Bennett Field is within a national park, there is the possibility that it could be affected by those Doge cuts in Washington, but it's unclear at this point what, if any, actual impact there will be.
Oh my goodness.
I'm glad you're bringing light to this. This is an airport you can see if you're flying into JFK, and that man you spoke with, Lincoln, with the big beard, he's like a real
character.
He lives at the airport, you were saying?
Yeah, he lives on site. He's been a ranger for a long time. He knows this history. And what's so fascinating about this chapter in the early 30s was that back then flying was moving so fast, but you know, it was really only for a select few. It was so expensive.
Right.
In fact, a ticket, round-trip tickets, 2 of them, coast to coast, cost the same as a flight, cost the same as a new car.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I'm glad you brought that to life. Great
Yes.
archival material. Thank you, Brad.
Absolutely.